All right. Hopefully this is working here. So, this video is going to go over survey, interview, and observation. I'm going to talk about what we need to do this week, the things that will be due next week, and when you can start your research here. Um, so, yeah. So when you're planning your survey, so this is for those who are considering doing a survey. Um, First of all, you need to have some kind of purpose of your survey. What are you hoping to discover? Um, Remember, you're probably going to be asking like students or Astana residents, or maybe like a certain community like foreigners or women or men or something like that. So you need to think like, okay, well, what information do I think I could get out of these people that would be valuable, right? We are getting their just opinion. Um, and sometimes you don't want necessarily a bad opinion to come in your research because whatever you receive, you can't ignore it. You have to use it. Okay. So just kind of think, okay, what information could we use that would be beneficial? You can ask them questions about the problem, about solutions, about criteria, um, about how they view the problem. Do they think it's a problem? In what ways can we solve it? Um, all right, continuing on. Just a second. Please read. Oh, I'm not. Do they agree? Fucking sorry, my phone is listening to me. Okay, so yeah, who's our target audience? Yep, so just consider any limitations like, okay, well, what can't they say? What don't they know? What shouldn't we ask them, right? Because you want to be careful what not to ask them, things that they can't answer. If you're like, uh, you know, what is the third founding principle of, blah, 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 like something too smart, and they're like, what? Like you got to treat them at their level, okay? Um, you don't want it to be overly lengthy. An internet survey should be 5 to 10 minutes and it should be easy to take. Okay. If there's a lot of long questions that you have to type out, you have to type out long. If they have to type out long responses, nobody's going to take your survey. Okay. The quicker it is, the shorter it is, the more likely people are going to take it. Now, you don't want it to be too short where you have no good information. You need to have some good information you're gathering, but don't make it too long or too short. And you're not trying to influence the responses, okay? So you don't want to ask a question like, "Don't you think NU is really evil, right?" Question mark. Like you don't want to lead them in the direction that you think, right? Like, pollution is really killing the city, don't you think? Like we don't want to ask questions in a very biased, leading way, okay? Um, Now we have a whole bunch of survey style questions. What chapter is it? Mm, One of the chapters in our book, here, let me find out real quick. Um, Chapter 6, it's called Research. If you go to your screen sharing is paused. Hopefully it's still recording. All right. If you go to uh, let's see, where is it at? Here we go. 140. It's table 6.2, um, page 146.2. You can find a detailed explanation of all these different types, but we're going to go through them real quick here. A dichotomous question is just two parts. Yes, no, true, false, agree, disagree. If we have some kind of finite response we want to collect here. Now, dichotomous questions, uh, there's not a whole lot of things in the world that are dichotomous, right? And so it's not always the best way to do it. But it can be one method. Multiple choices is going to give them a little bit more options than the dichotomous one. Um, and you can have them click on more than one if you want, click all that are true or something like that. Or there can just be one right answer, maybe. Um, The Likert scale looks a bit like this right here. So from very satisfied to very dissatisfied, or from rarely to always. This helps us capture the full kind of gamut of experience. And it probably gets us a little bit more nuanced information because we have five or six different options in between loving something and hating something. Okay. Um, that's the Leichhardt. The semantic one is quite similar, except for we're just using two adjectives. So like this, okay? So it's similar to Leichhardt, except for we're using these semantic differentials. We're using these adjectives: simple, difficult, interesting, boring. Um, and then ranking scales, you can just kind of rank. Uh, let's see. Um, yeah, how much you like. You can put stuff. You can rate it as like this is the first one, this is the second one, this is the third one. So you could potentially ask them like, uh, what do they think are the best, out of these five solutions, rank your solutions, maybe. If you think the solutions are understandable to your audience, you could tell them your potential tentative solutions and be like, which ones do you think are the best to the worst? Um, and then open-ended questions. Now, again, for our class, I'm going to say be very careful. I would say don't do long answer. Maybe you could have one short answer. But the more open-ended questions you have, the less likely people will take your survey. Okay. Short answer, long answer, people hate these. Okay. Um, yeah. All right. So some common errors to avoid. Obviously, I'm going to ask all of you to have grammatically perfect survey questions. Please use a grammar checker, AI, whatever it is, to check your grammar for you to make sure that you've written the sentences grammatically perfect. Okay. Um, so unbalanced scales. All right. So, if you say, how would you rate the product? Okay, good, excellent, amazing. Well, what about negative, right? So we need to make sure that we have, the negative part in there. Um, or extremely satisfied, very satisfied, somewhat satisfied, not satisfied. But there's more positives there than there are negatives there, right? So we want to make sure that we have a balanced scale. Um, this is sort of a basic one, but I've seen this before. How easy it was it to log on to the website? Yes or no? Right? There's a mismatched question and response there. Make sure you check for that. Um, and then just too simple right here. How would you rate your work environment, good or bad? It's kind of too general, too vague. Mutually exclusive answers here. Boy, where did we go? How often do you check your email? Okay. So if I check my email twice a day, do I click B or C here? Right? And so we have mutually exclusive answers here. Same with this one right here. If I'm 25 years old, do I select B or C? Um, Here, what do you normally use to check your email? Smartphone, computer, tablet, iPad, right? A tablet and an iPad are the same. iPhone and smartphone are the same. So, okay, we have some issues there. All right. This list right here is available on our Moodle under week 11. You're going to see a PDF that will say something like good and bad survey questions. And it will have most of what I've mentioned here. So if you want to scan through that, or if you want to click through any of these, it's a great resource. Please do not embarrass me or this class with the surveys that you send out to other people. Okay, this can have real world implications. Um, do not send out your survey until after you submit it this Sunday. Okay, so you should wait until Monday, which is like what, November 3rd, to send out your survey to people. Maybe Sunday, November 2nd, after you submit it to me, you can then send it out. Um, All right. And the very first question that you should have on your survey, um, is going to be from our informed consent documents here. Here, let me just change my screen sharing here. All right. So, I've already showed you guys this before, but I'm just going to remind you briefly again. Under our informed consent section here, if you're doing an internet survey, you must have this one here, consent form template for internet surveys filled out. Do not put my name in it, put your name in it, put your email in it, fill out your information and your team members' information in there, um, and update any of the red text on there, and that will be question one of your survey. Okay. Um, Demographic questions, you should ask some demographic questions. Now, you don't want to ask too many demographic questions. We don't want to know their name. We don't want to know their email, okay, because we don't want to be able to find them. We want to keep this somewhat anonymous, all right? So do not collect their emails or their names. But you might want to know their age or their sex or what school they go to on campus. Again, you might not need to know that. You need to think, what demographic information do I need to know? Right? What will it help me to know? Will it be important to know if they're a man or a woman? If not, then you don't need to ask them that. Uh, Maybe all you need to do is ask them if they're a student at Nazarbayev University, right? Um, and or if they're if they live in Astana. But you're going to ask those demographic questions after the informed consent question. Then you'll ask demographic questions, just a couple, right? And then you'll go into the main important questions that you're going to ask. Really, you probably shouldn't have more than 10 questions. This survey should take them just 3 to 7 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes max. Okay. Um, all right. So that's internet surveys. You should collect about 20 uh, internet surveys, and you will have to do some. Yeah, well, we'll talk about what you'll have to do with it next week. But you'll want to collect 15 to 20 responses. If we were doing this in real life, we would want hundreds of responses because we're just doing this for practice. 20 is enough. Um, and let me show you guys one more thing here. Um, that would be chapter 6 right here. Okay, so we've got chapter 6 right here. Um, so like I said, you can see all the different styles of questions there that I've talked about here. Testing the questionnaire before you give it out. Make sure you test it, okay? Um, think about how you're going to present it. Um, and for all of you, I would recommend reading through some of this section, okay? If you're doing questionnaire, if you're doing a survey, read through this, all right? Um, Now, if you're doing an interview, look at that interview, okay? Page 136. I'm going to ask you to read through this. It'll teach you how to prepare for conducting an interview. It'll teach you how to begin the interview, how to conduct the interview, how to conclude the interview. So you need to obviously arrive on time. You need to let them beforehand know what questions you're going to be asking them. You'll email them in advance. These are the questions we'll be asking you. Once you meet with them, you're going to have them do either a written signed consent or an oral consent. And both of those documents are in that same place on Moodle. Um, just because you always have to have consent for any research you do here, or it cannot be part of our research here. Okay, I must have that consent form. Um, And when you conduct an interview, just remember that you're going to be taking notes. All right. If you want to record it, you can. Again, you have to get their consent to record it. Um, but you're going to start with your prepared questions and then be prepared to ask more follow-up questions as you dive deeper in. Um, and then send a brief thank you note afterward. Okay. Um, All right, yeah. So make sure you read through that. And the same is true with all with these questions. You're gonna want to spend some time coming up with good questions. Obviously, when you're doing an interview, you're not going to do like multiple choice questions, right? They're going to be mostly open-ended questions that requires them to kind of explain in detail. All right, and then finally, we've got observation here, observations and demonstrations. Observation is sort of the most basic one. Um, just remember with observation, you should not interact with any humans. Okay? If you interact with a human, you need an informed consent document. For observations, if you're just observing how people throw away trash or whether or not people are getting in a wreck at a busy stop, or observing air quality or something. As long as you just do not involve other people, okay? Just observe the phenomenon or the situation that's happening. And you need to write extensive notes about the observations. Um, all right, so for observation this weekend, you would so this weekend when you guys submit, actually let's pull up our requirements here for the final for this weekend. Um, Methods develop form, assignment guidelines here. We'll talk about city training in just a second. So you're gonna inform consent form for anyone doing survey or interview. Observation does not require informed consent because you're not interacting with any humans. Okay. Um, Primary research document, survey, PDF, observation, then a document with your plans, expectations, questions, like just give me a bunch of details, like a good one-page document with a bunch of details on what your observation is, where, when, why, how, right? And if you're doing an interview, then the interview questions and who you're interviewing, obviously. I want to know who that is. Um, so that's what you're going to submit this weekend. And All right. Yeah, good. Okay. Like I said, definitely check out how to recognize and avoid bad survey questions if you are doing a survey. Um, some of that would be helpful for interview. Um, all right, not all of it though. And then the final piece that's due this weekend is a detailed outline of your methods. This can just be an expanded version of your memo proposal. Um, but you are going to need participants, methodology, ethical considerations. You're going to need criteria, options, and weighting. Okay, so you're going to have to explain, not just tell me what your criteria is and what your options are and what your weights are, but why you picked those ones. Okay, not just what, but also why. That why is very important. I need to know why you picked every criteria you picked. I need to know why you picked every option you picked. I need to know why the weighting is why it's set at what it is. And so you're going to tell us what it is, weighting is at 2 for cost, and then why, right? You do not have to cite for this first draft of the methods. I call it a detailed outline, but it's essentially a first draft, okay? It just doesn't require everything, which is why it's detailed outline, but draft, whatever. Um, I would highly recommend including citations, but this is a pass-fail assignment. As long as you have these basics, you get all of the points, okay? Um, all right, cool. City training. I have updated the city training uh, instructions document here. So this is accurate. This is up to date. So you're going to go to the website, you're going to register, fill out your information. Eventually, you'll click your affiliation as Nazarbayev, type it in as Nazarbayev University. There will be a button. After all of that, there will be a button to add course, and then it'll ask you these 9 questions. And you just want to respond student conducting no more than human minimal risk. And then 2 through 4, just say no, thank you. Number 5 is up to you. You need to pick one of them, but not the no thank you one. You have to pick one of them. Then no thank you, no, skip number 8, and then no. So that should give you 2 courses to complete. If it gives you 3, just do 2. Okay, 2 courses to complete, and they're both going to be basic student courses. All right. Um, this one right here is going to be based off of student. It's going to be based off of your first and fifth question there, that the courses you'll take. Each certificate is worth half a percentage of your grade, totaling 1% for all of the city training. Every student has to do this individually, okay? So you must all individually do city training. Um, yeah, okay, cool. I think I covered most of it there. Um, Come on, Moodle. Like I said, uh, the PowerPoint that I showed you guys on the survey questions is very similar to this document here. Um, if you guys have any questions or concerns, let me know. Um, this is what you need to be working on this week. And then once you submit all of this, like I said, then you can start doing your primary research. So if it's an interview, you can start conducting that. In fact, what I'll tell you now is if you are doing an interview, you need to email them now to set up a schedule, set up a time so that you can meet with them next week because you're going to need to have your results next week. Okay? Observation results next week, interview note results next week, survey results. They're all due next week. So you're gonna now it's okay if you don't collect every single result, but you're going to need to submit a results draft, not this weekend, but next weekend of the results of your research. And so what will normally happen for a student is they'll send out their survey on Monday morning or Sunday night after they've sent it to me. They'll wait a few days. Maybe by Wednesday, they have 16 people that took it or 18 people that took it. And so then, let's say by Wednesday or Thursday, they have enough people. So at that point, then they'll download all their results and then they'll start creating their graphics. And then they'll start looking at what is the results of their research. And you'll actually turn that into your results section. Okay. And that same goes for interview. You want to have your interview done by Wednesday, Thursday, Friday at the latest. Okay. But you want to have time to actually not just conduct your research, but then get the research back and be able to then work on it. Okay. Um, all right. Is there anything else? You only have to do one type of primary research. You can do two or three. If you do your first survey and it sucks, you want to do another survey, you could. I mean, you shouldn't do a sucky first survey. But let's say you do a first survey and it's not as effective as you wanted it to be. We'll say it the nice way. You could technically do another survey after this. You could do a survey and an interview, an observation and a survey, whatever. But you only technically have to do one to get the full points. All right, that's it. Yeah, I think that's it. Cool. We'll end it there.